Thomas East was an English music publisher. His career was complicated by the existence of patents, monopolies granted by the Crown to William Byrd and Thomas Morley. This restricted his ability to publish what he chose, but he nevertheless made an important contribution to musical life in England. He printed the significant collection of madrigals Musica Transalpina, which appeared in 1588. East had a close association with William Byrd. He printed religious compositions by Byrd. Publishing career. East was made a freeman of the Stationers' Company on 6 December 1565. The first appearance of his name as a printer occurs in the registers of the Company in 1576, when he issued Robinson's Christmas Recreations of Histories and Moralizations applied for our solace and consolations. After this date his name is a frequent occurrence as a printer of general literature, but he does not appear as a printer of music until 1587, when the death occurred of William Byrd's printer Thomas Fortollier. Under the date of 6 November 1587, the Stationers' Company recorded a set of part books entitled, according to the Register, Basses, Sonnets and Songs made into music of 5 parts, by William Byrd. This is taken to be identical with the undated edition of Byrd's Psalm, Sonnets, and Songs of Sadhana and Piety, the dated edition of which appeared in 1588. In this 1588 edition, East is described as publishing in Aldersgate Street and as Byrd's assignee, Musica Transalpina. In 1588 the great collection of Italian madrigals entitled Musica Transalpina was published, and became the most important agent in promoting that admiration for the madrigal form as used by the Italians, which resulted in the foundation of the splendid school of English madrigalists. The frequency with which the printer's name appears as Est, taken in connection with the fact that he was chosen to introduce the Italian compositions into England, made it difficult to resist the conjecture that the printer was of Italian extraction. However, this theory has now been discounted. Other publications. In 1589 Byrd's Songs of Sundry Natures and the first book of his Cantions Sacrées were published by East. In the following year the same composer contributed 2 madrigals to Thomas Watson's first set of Italian madrigals Englished, as he had previously done in the case of Musica Transalpina. In 1591 the second set of Byrd's own Cantions Sacrées was issued by his assignee. In 1591 East printed a new edition of the Psalter of William Damon, the first issue of which had been published by John Day in 1579. This new issue of the book was published by William Swain, who seems to have undertaken the expense of the work in consequence of the former edition not having received its due. This Psalter has a special interest for musicians, in that its 2 parts present respectively the ancient and the modern methods of harmonizing tunes for congregational use. The first section of the book gives the tune to the tenor, the second, according to modern usage, to the treble voice. It would appear that the innovation did not at once appeal to the public, for in the following year East brought out a Psalter on his own account, of which he seems to have been the editor, and in which the tenor part has the tune. As in all the older Psalters, the tunes were harmonized by 10 eminent composers. They are Richard Allison, E. Blanks, Michael Cavendish, William Cobbold, John Dooland, John Farmer, Giles Farnaby, Edmund Hooper, Edward Johnson, and George Kirby. The title of the first edition runs, "The whole book of Psalm, with the wanted tunes, as they are sung in churches, composed into 4 parts, all which are so placed that 4 may sing ec one a sua ill part in this book." wherein the church tunes are carefully corrected, and thereunto added other short tunes visually sung in London, and other places of this realm, with a table in the end of the book of such tunes as are newly added, with the number of exemples to the said tune, compiled by sundry authors who have laboured herein, that the VN skillful with small practice may attain to sing that part which is fittest for the voice. For this it is plain that the Psalter is an early example of what musicians now call score, as distinguished from the part books, each of which contained a separate part, so that a whole set of books was always necessary before a madrigal or other composition contained in them could be sung. The book affords also an early instance of the practice of calling tunes by various names. Glastonbury tune, Kentish tune, and Cheshire tune are thus distinguished. The Psalter is dedicated to the Right Hon. Sir John Puckering, Knight, Lord Keeper of the Great Seal, and a dedication and preface are written by East. The second edition, the earliest known to Burney and Hawkins, is dated 1594, and a third appeared in 1604. In 1593 Thomas Morley's Canzonets, all little short songs to 3 voices, was issued, and in 1594 the same composer's madrigals to 4 voices. The year after this the 5-part ballets and the 2-part canzonets of the same composer were published. On the 22nd of January 1596 Byrd's patent expired, and East for the next 2 years did business on his own account exclusively. On the 22nd of September of that year, a brief introduction to the skill of song concerning the practice set forth by William Barth, Gent, was transferred to East from Abel Jeffs, by whom it had been printed in 1584, and on the 24th of November he issued George Kirby's madrigals. In December 1596 many of the books published by license from Byrd were transferred to East independently. The cessation of the monopoly seems to have given an extraordinary impetus to the publication of music. In the next few years nearly all the masterpieces of the English madrigalists were issued. In 1597 Nathaniel Patrick's Songs of Sundry Natures were published, and an oration delivered by Dr. John Bull at Gresham College was printed, as well as the second edition of Musica Transalpina. The next year saw the publication of Wilby's first set of madrigals, Morley's madrigals and canzonets, selected from the works of Italian composers, a selection from the works of Orlando di Lasso, and Wilkes's ballets and madrigals. In this year a new patent was granted to Thomas Morley, whose celebrated introduction had appeared in the previous year, from another press than East's. This fact, taken in connection with the circumstance that East's name does not appear on the register of the station as company until 1600, may mean that he had had a difference with Morley, who now had it in his power to injure his business. Whether or not this were the case it is of course impossible to decide, but the difference, if such existed, was not of long duration, for in July 1600 Dowland's second book of songs appeared, from East's press. Jones's first book of airs was issued in the next year, when the great collection of madrigals called The Triumphs of Oriana was printed, though not published. The idea of this collection seems to have been taken from a book of madrigals by various composers, published at the Felice Press at Antwerp in the same year. The Antwerp collection had the general title of Il Trionfo di Dori, and consisted of 29 madrigals, each ending with the words Viva la Bella Dori. It is not unlikely that this collection may first have appeared in Italy, and become known to English musicians, or rather to Thomas Morley, through the agency of Nicholas Young, who, as we know from the preface to Musica Transalpina, was in the habit of receiving all the new music from Italy. If Hawkins' account of the circumstances under which the English collection was made in honour of Queen Elizabeth be true, the idea originated with the Earl of Nottingham, to whom the collection is dedicated, and who, with a view to alleviate the Queen's concern for the execution of Essex, gave for a prize subject to the poets and musicians of the time the beauty and accomplishments of his royal mistress. Hawkins goes on to surmise that the Queen was fond of the name Oriana, but at the same time adds, on Camden's authority, that of Spanish ambassador had libelled her by the name of Amadis Oriana, and for his insolence was put under guard. This last circumstance would account for the fact, which seems to have been alike unknown to Hawkins and to Hawes, the editor of the reprint of the collection, that The Triumphs of Oriana was not actually published till after the Queen's death in 1603. On this supposition, the name which was intended to please the Queen gave her great offence, so that the publication had to be delayed. This accounts for the presence of two madrigals by Pilkington and Bateson respectively, in which the burden of the words runs, "In heaven lives Oriana," instead of the ending common to all the rest of the compositions, "Long live fair Oriana." The contribution of Michael.Leese arrived too late to be inserted in any other place than immediately after the dedication, and Bateson's "When Oriana walked to take the air" was too late to be printed at all in the collection. It was placed in the first set of madrigals by this composer, which was published by East later on in 1603, together with Wilkes's second set, and Medulla Music, by Byrd and Ferrabosco. The publications of 1604 are Michael.Leese's first set of madrigals, and Amp.C., the first book of songs or airs of 4 parts, composed by F.F.P. The remaining books, which are undoubtedly of East's printing of Byrd's Gradualia, 1605, Yule's Canzonets, and Croce's Musica Sacra, 1607, continuation of East's business after his death. The second set of Wilby's madrigals is stated to be printed by Thomas East, alias Snowdon, and it was therefore surmised by the 19th-century musicologist Rimbolton that for some reason unexplained East took the name of Snowdon at this time, and that consequently all books bearing the latter name are really to be included among the works printed by East. In fact, Thomas Snowdon was East's nephew and former apprentice. A freeman of the Stationers' Company, he took over East's business after his death. Snowdon kept for a time the well-known name on his title pages for commercial reasons. In December 1610, some of East's books were again assigned to John Brown, and in September 1611 many were transferred to Matthew Lowndes, John Brown, and Thomas Snowdon. His widow, Lucretia East, died in 1631, leaving 20l. for the purchase of plate for the Stationers' Company, to which East gave in 1604 a piece of plate of 31 ounces to be excused from serving some office.